I once believed the worst thing a widow could face was a house that echoed too loudly with silence. I was wrong. The worst thing is discovering, on the eve of your daughter's wedding, that the man she trusts with her future has calculated your body into his private arithmetic of conquest, and that the equation begins with a kiss you never asked for. My name is Virginia Blackwood. 65 years lived in the unforgiving spotlight of film sets and fragrance campaigns, each wrinkle negotiated like a stubborn contract clause. I buried my husband Michael 2 springs ago, yet some mornings I still reach for the coffee he brewed too strong, still expect his whistle drifting down the hall. Acting kept my posture erect, grief tried to fold it. I refused to bend. So when my daughter Charlotte announced she'd found love with Aidan Cartwright, a charming 23-year-old who staffed the concierge desk at her gallery, I clapped like any supportive mother. Yes, his resume was thin, but charisma has launched bigger careers than mine. Besides, Charlotte's smile had grown scarce since Michael's funeral. If Aidan rekindled it, who was I to scold the flame? The wedding weekend unfurled inside Hawthorne Estate, a Georgian mansion hired for its manicured gardens and rentable romance. White tents blossomed across the lawn, billowing silk cathedrals that promised vows and champagne toasts. I arrived early, wearing a dove-gray sheath and my late husband's sapphire ring, ready to blend dignity with celebration. Aidan met me at the driveway, tall, Jim lean, hair slicked back like a Golden Age movie villain redeemed by a grin. "Mrs. Blackwood," he exclaimed, offering a bouquet of peonies already wilting in July heat. "Could I steal a moment? Something private, wedding logistics." I agreed. Mothers of brides become human clipboards. Privacy is part of the job. He guided me toward the largest tent, its entrance flapping like a secret waiting to be told. Inside, chandeliers glimmered above rows of ghost-white chairs. The hush felt reverent, but the air smelled of lilies and tension. Aidan stopped near the altar arch, fingers tightening on my arm. "Virginia," he said, first time he'd used my given name. "You're stunning. Always were." Before I could pivot from gratitude to unease, his hand slid to my neck, a thumb resting on my pulse. He drew me closer, the way directors once angled me toward co-stars for kiss cam close-ups. Except this wasn't scripted. His mouth crashed against mine. Wine-sweet, desperate, the world narrowed to panic-bruised heartbeats. For half a second I froze. Actress instincts misfiring. Play the scene? Cut? Then survival snapped the clapperboard. I shoved, nails scraping his jaw. He grunted, but desire masqueraded as entitlement. His palm groped my chest. Fury set my blood ablaze. I swung my right hand, memory of stage combat guiding aim, and the sapphire ring Michael chose 40 years earlier met Aidan's cheekbone with righteous precision. "Skin split," he yelped, staggering backward, clutching his face like a crimson mask. He bolted through the tent flap, leaving droplets of red across the aisle runner. I straightened my dress, wiped lipstick smeared by theft, and followed a measured heartbeat behind. Outside, sunlight spotlighted the tableau. Guests milling, musicians tuning, and the groom-to-be sprinting past caterers, wounded pride leaking down his jaw. Heads turned, murmurs swelled. Then I stepped into view, hair immaculate, expression carved from marble. The murmurs ripened into gasps. Charlotte materialized beside the floral archway, silk robe fluttering. "Mom, what happened? Aidan says you attacked him." Her voice trembled between accusation and fear. I opened my mouth, but words twisted, strangled by the weight of spectacle. Guests eyed us like a courtroom audience awaiting verdict. I should have shouted truth, that her fiancé treated consent like an optional accessory. Instead, I swallowed rage, smoothing a public mask I'd worn since my first magazine cover at 19. I'll explain later, I said, betrayal's flavor scorched on my tongue. Aiden, now flanked by groomsmen, pressed gauze to the slash on his cheek. Your mother's unstable, he hissed loud enough for onlookers. She hates that I'm not some Yale-educated trophy. Blood dotted his collar. Proof or performance? I couldn't tell. Wedding planners scrambled, postponing the ceremony. Charlotte stared at me, tears diluting her mascara into bruise-colored streaks. Why can't you just accept who I love? She whispered, the question cut deeper than any ring-crafted wound. I watched her retreat into a swirl of attendants, leaving me alone among overturned chairs and lily petals. Bruised under hurried footsteps, silence finally descended, thick as humidity. I tasted metal, guilt, or residual fear, and then I realized the truth I had buried under decades of stage lights. Secrets decay into monsters when kept underground. If I protected my daughter by hiding this, I'd hand her years of marriage to a man who mistook boundaries for invitations. But courage does not bloom instantly. It germinates in darkness. That afternoon, I chose delay over confession, a decision that would haunt me as surely as the scar blossoming on Aiden's cheek would remind him of my sapphire-shaped refusal. Because later, when the sun dipped and apologies danced on the brink of my lips, something far worse than a stolen kiss emerged from the shadows, proving my silence had merely opened the door for the unimaginable. I spent the next hour drifting through Hawthorne Estate like a ghost armed with a smile, fielding florists' questions about centerpiece heights, nodding at guests who offered compliments on the venue, pretending not to notice the speculative glances tossed my way like confetti laced with doubt. My cheek muscles ached more than Aiden's wound, but I kept them lifted. A lifetime in front of cameras had taught me that once you let your face collapse, the rest of you soon follows. Inside the bridal suite, Charlotte's bridesmaids fluttered around her, steam ironing the train of her ivory gown. She sat rigid at a vanity table, eyes fixed on her reflection but seeing nothing. I hovered in the doorway, clutching a glass of water, my peace offering. When she noticed me, her shoulders stiffened. The room thinned to 2 heartbeats. "Does he need stitches?" she asked, voice flat. "Yes," I answered, setting the glass on the vanity, "but the scar will fade." Her laugh cracked like brittle glass. "So will this marriage if you don't tell me what really happened." I opened my mouth, honesty burning at the back of my throat, yet memory of guests murmuring unstable tightened it shut. If Charlotte called off the wedding now, tabloids would feast on my past Hollywood scandals, blame a vengeful mother desperate for attention. Worse, Aiden might twist truth into slander, calling me a jealous matriarch unable to share the spotlight with a younger man. My daughter would be left sorting shards of rumor instead of facts. "I misread a moment," I lied, tasting ash. "I thought he insulted your father's memory in jest." I overreacted. Her jaw loosened a fraction, relief mixing with residual hurt. "You've never struck anyone in your life." "Grief changes shapes," I said, and hurried out before she could dissect that flimsy line. In the corridor, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I considered ignoring it until instinct, the same that once told me which script offers would tank, urged me to answer. A low male voice greeted me. "Courteous, measured, Mrs. Blackwood. This is Dr. Nathan Hartley, chief resident at Crestview Medical. Aiden Cartwright is in our ER. He asked me to ring you before he called the police." Ice touched my spine. "Police?" "He claims you assaulted him without provocation. Our protocol demands we document both sides." The tense memory flashed. His hand on my neck, lips pressed without permission, shame morphed into steel. "Doctor, Did Mr. Cartwright mention sexual aggression? A pause. He did not. Then he's omitted the precipitating crime. My voice carried a calm I barely felt. I'll send a statement and appear in person if required. Meanwhile, please ensure photos capture the angle of his laceration. It mirrors the shape of my ring. Dr. Hartley's tone shifted. Perhaps he heard the timbre of a woman too weary to perform. Understood, ma'am. I ended the call, heart pounding like a tap shoe on marble. Aiden wasn't retreating. He was recalibrating. If police got involved before I spoke, his narrative would cement. I needed evidence beyond my word, and a bruise on his cheek. A sharp rap shocked me from thoughts. It was Gavin, Hawthorne's security manager, thick-necked, discreet. Ma'am, I reviewed the main lawn cameras. They caught Mr. Cartwright exiting the tent, bleeding, but cameras inside lost power during setup. Deliberate sabotage or convenient luck. Either way, my witness list had shrunk to me, and any trace of lipstick he wore like guilt. Can you pull audio from outside? I asked. Working on it. He hesitated. If you feel unsafe. I feel insulted, not unsafe, I said, although the distinction blurred. He nodded, professional neutrality masking concern, and left. I inhaled lavender from a centerpiece, stealing nerves, when Charlotte's maid of honor, a sweet, scatterbrained girl named Molly, peeked out of the bridal suite. Miss Blackwood, quick question, she whispered. Do you know where the honor roses went, the ones for the mother-daughter photo? My throat tightened around Michael's absence. Honor roses had been his idea when Charlotte was 6, red for love, white for trust. They're in the caterer's fridge. I managed. As Molly skipped away, an idea bloomed. The roses. My fingerprints were on none of them yet. If I delivered a freshly gloved bouquet to Aiden's hospital bedside, the petals might capture DNA from his wandering hands. A silent witness. Risky? Yes. But silence already brewed disaster. I fetched the bouquet, donned satin gloves borrowed from wardrobe racks, and ordered a car to Crestview. Outside, guests whispered behind manicured hedges. I felt their words tug, but urgency propelled me forward. The ride took 15 minutes, enough to draft a statement on my phone. Timeline, assault description, emotional distress. At the ER desk, I requested to see Aiden. The nurse eyed the bouquet but led me to his curtained bay. He lay shirtless, stitches fresh, ego bandage thinner than skin. Surprise widened his eyes. Then a smirk marred the starry strips. Come to apologize? I held the roses like a shield, come to ensure truth blooms before lies take root. His gaze flicked to the nurse adjusting monitors. Audience. He softened features into injured victim mode. Virginia, I forgive you. You're under a lot of stress. Words crawled through me like fire ants. I stepped closer, lowering voice. Police will ask how a grieving mother managed a perfect defensive strike. I'll tell them you taught me where to aim when you grabbed me. His nostrils flared. No one will believe. Your cheek bears my ring's imprint, I cut in. My lips, however, bear no trace of your DNA. Consent leaves evidence, Aiden. So does assault. He glanced at the bouquet, suspicion dawning. I set it on the tray table, petals brushing the medical chart. A token from your fiancé's mother, I said aloud. Then in hush steel, touch them and you sign your own confession. Before he could reply, Dr. Hartley entered with a clipboard. I handed him my statement. Doctor, please add this to the file. I pivoted toward the exit, leaving rose perfume and unspoken war behind. Outside, clouds rolled like drums across the afternoon sky. My car idled. I checked my phone, message from Gavin. Recovered partial audio. Male voice says, "Relax, it's just a kiss. Want me to forward to PD?" I type back one word. Yes. As the car turned toward Hawthorne Estate, thunder rumbled low. Ceremony or not, storm gates had opened. And when lightning seeks the tallest target, truth stands tallest of all. Dusk rolled across Hawthorne Estate like indigo velvet, swallowing the manicured lawns and transforming white tents into looming silhouettes. Inside the main pavilion, chandeliers glared against gathering darkness as if refusing to let chaos dim their hired brilliance. I arrived to find guests herded beneath crystal droplets of light, string quartet still sawing Pachelbel in an attempt to stitch normalcy over a jagged day. Their melodies felt obscene, but the show, as always, tried to go on. Charlotte stood near the altar arch, veil down, bouquet trembling. Makeup artists swarmed, repainting mascara streaks as if grief and rage were merely cosmetic malfunctions. When she saw me, her shoulders stiffened, then sagged, a daughter too exhausted to carry another assumption. I walked the aisle runner slowly, aware that every eye tracked my steps. Somewhere outside the tent, thunder growled like a caged animal. Humidity thickened the air with the scent of impending storm. Before I could speak, Gavin, the security manager, slipped through a side flap and handed me a thumb drive. "Audio's forwarded to police, but thought you'd want a copy," he whispered. His eyes flicked toward Charlotte, compassion simmering. I tucked the drive into my clutch, feeling its weight like a loaded key. "Charlotte," I began, voice pitched low, "there's evidence you haven't heard." Her fingers gripped the bouquet tighter. "Mom, please." "Not again. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. "It shouldn't start at all," I said, fighting to keep volume gentle. "Aiden," she cut me off. "He says you misunderstood. He's willing to apologize publicly if you'll do the same." Her plea dangled between us like a wilted boutonniere. Behind her, bridesmaids exchanged wary glances. Their pastel gowns suddenly seemed like stage costumes in a tragedy none had auditioned for. I opened my clutch, fingers brushing the thumb drive, but another voice interrupted. "Smooth, practiced. I'll apologize right now." Aiden entered from the rear aisle, cheek bandaged, tuxedo impeccable except for the stiffness in his posture. He carried the honor roses Molly had misplaced, petals dark where blood had dripped earlier. Rain had begun to patter against the canvas roof, each drop a slow ticking clock. He approached Charlotte, then faced the gathering crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, earlier today, a misunderstanding escalated. I regret any distress caused, especially to my future mother-in-law." He bowed his head toward me, contrition painted broad and bright. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the seated guests. A performance in real time. I stepped forward, spine straight. "An apology without truth is just rehearsal," I said, loud enough to thread past the string quartet's trembling notes. Aiden's smile faltered. Charlotte's eyes ping-ponged between us. "My truth," I continued, "is that your fiancé lured me into seclusion and forced a kiss. When I resisted, he assaulted me." Whispers erupted like popping corn. I remained silent to spare my daughter humiliation, but silence merely fertilizes lies. Thunder cracked overhead, rattling crystal. Aiden's jaw clenched. "This is your grief talking, Virginia." Gavin's voice boomed from loudspeakers. He'd cut the quartet feed. "Let's hear grief speak for itself." A low hiss of audio filled the tent. Then Aiden's recorded whisper spilled forward. "Relax. It's just a kiss." My own sharp gasp followed, then the crack of my palm and Aiden's pained yelp. The entire room froze, chandeliers flickering as if shocked by electricity of truth. Charlotte's bouquet slipped from her hands, roses thudding onto the white runner like hearts dropped from a great height. Aiden lunged toward the audio booth, but two uniformed officers stepped through the entrance, rainwater glistening on their hats. One produced handcuffs, the other a warrant. Aiden Cartwright, you're under arrest for sexual battery and filing a false report. Guests rose in a wave, some craning for better view, others turning away in embarrassment. Aiden's gaze darted, searching for allies. Finding none, he barked at Charlotte, "You believe this setup?" His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. Charlotte's answer was a single step back, veil trembling like a wounded wing. As officers escorted Aiden down the aisle, lightning illuminated the tent's translucent walls, etching his silhouette into collective memory. Rain hammered harder, drumming furious applause. Silence followed, profound and heavy. I approached my daughter, up close. The veil couldn't hide devastation carving her features. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She choked a sob. "For what, telling the truth?" "For not telling it sooner." I gathered her trembling hands. "You deserved my honesty before the world forced it." Outside, thunder receded to gentle rumbles. The storm had spent its fury. Charlotte inhaled, shoulders lifting. "Call off the wedding," she said to the planner hovering nearby. "Send everyone home." Gasps circled, but no one objected. Guests began filing out. Chatter subdued. Gavin signaled he'd escort the last stragglers. Within minutes, the grand pavilion held only lily petals, toppled programs, and two women standing amid a dream collapsed. Charlotte's knees buckled. I caught her, guiding her to the front pew. Rain softened to a hush overhead. She leaned into me like she did at 6 years old after scraping her knee, seeking the comfort of arms both fierce and forgiving. "Mom," she whispered, "I kept thinking you hated him because he wasn't Dad. I never saw this." "Predators wear whatever costume serves," I murmured, stroking her hair. "But you saw in time." Tears slid down both our cheeks, hers for love betrayed, mine for courage belated but intact. Lightning flashed once more, illuminating the sapphire ring still stained with dried blood. I raised it, letting light catch facets. Michael's promise circled my finger. Love protects. Tonight it had. Charlotte straightened. "Let's go home, Mom." We stood, stepping over crushed roses. Outside the tent, security lights glowed warm against receding storm clouds. The path ahead was muddy, uncertain, but it was ours. Claimed by truth, spoken at last. A gray Monday dawned over Hawthorne Estate. The storm departed, but leaving puddles that reflected toppled arches and wilted hydrangeas, ghosts of a wedding that never was. News vans idled at the gate, antennas sprouting like anxious stalks toward a scandal-blooming sky. Charlotte and I slipped inside through a staff entrance, escorted by Gavin, whose earpiece crackled with updates from local reporters, desperate for a statement. He shielded us past banquet tables strewn with half-eaten petit fours and champagne flutes, still holding flat ambitions. We headed for the estate's oak-paneled study, where the venue manager, Ellen Hawthorne, awaited. Sharp-shouldered blazer, hair pinned with military precision, she offered weak tea and a condolent smile. "Mrs. Blackwood, Miss Blackwood, I'm truly sorry." Her gaze flicked to my sapphire-ringed hand, perhaps noting the faint maroon halo beneath the stone. Aiden's dried blood that soap hadn't fully erased. She cleared her throat. "There's the matter of the contract. Hawthorne Estate stipulates that if a ceremony is canceled due to ethical breach by a principal party, all non-refundable fees transfer to the aggrieved host." Charlotte blinked. "Meaning?" I answered for her. "Meaning Aiden's family foots the bill." The phrase tasted strangely sweet. I had spent decades navigating clauses in entertainment contracts, morality, force majeure, defamation. Michael used to joke I could spot an escape hatch in a paper napkin. I pulled the document Gavin had emailed overnight, Section 14B, buried above the vendor indemnities. Ethical breach encompassed any criminal act committed on the property that endangered guests. Ellen nodded. Our legal team verified the arrest report. You qualify for full restitution, plus damages for reputational harm. She slid a spreadsheet across the mahogany desk. Total. 180,730 hours. Flowers, catering, designer linens, a fireworks package Aiden had added as surprise flourish, now as financial pyre. Charlotte swallowed. I don't want fireworks. I want peace. Ellen softened. Peace unfortunately requires paperwork. Sign here and we'll invoice the Cartwrights. Charlotte's hand trembled holding the pen. I covered her fingers, steadying. This isn't revenge, I murmured. It's reclamation. She signed. Ink bloomed like closure on the line. As Ellen left, my phone vibrated. Marshall. Good timing, I said. We've just filed a 6-figure invoice to our former in-laws. He chuckled. A lawyer's delight in contractual justice. Better news, DA accepted a plea. Aiden will serve 12 months county, register as a sex offender, and complete mandatory therapy. False report felony sticks. Sentencing Friday. Thank you, I breathed. One more gem. He added. Cartwright family attorney offered a private settlement to avoid civil suit. High 6 figures plus public apology. I glanced at Charlotte, now staring at rain-speckled window panes. Tell them we'll review terms after sentencing. I pocketed the phone, joined my daughter. The gardens beyond the glass dripped like watercolors gone soft. Where do we go from here? She whispered. Forward, I answered. But first, breakfast. We drove to a quiet diner 15 miles away where no one knew our faces. Over pancakes and black coffee, Charlotte unfolded the timeline of her relationship. How Aiden had dazzled her with handwritten poems cribbed from obscure blogs. How he'd insisted she distance herself from negative energy after Michael's death. Code for spending less time with me. Each revelation stung, but honesty applied antiseptic. When her story emptied, mine began. The call from Dr. Hartley. Gavin's audio, the roses meant to capture fingerprints. She listened, jaw clenched, tears glistening but unspilled. You gathered proof while I doubted you. You loved him, I said. Love clouds. Proof clears. She exhaled, long and steady. I'd like to donate the wedding invoice money to your elder abuse center. Dad would approve. My heart lurched prideward. He'd cheer. We paid, ignored curious glances, and stepped into weak sunshine. Outside, my phone rang. Unknown again. I answered, expecting a reporter. Instead, a trembling female voice introduced herself as Rachel Cartwright, Aiden's older sister. Mrs. Blackwood, Charlotte, I'm ashamed. My parents are preparing a press conference calling this a smear. Don't believe them. Aiden's done this before. Her confession tumbled like stones. In college, he'd been warned for misconduct, but Daddy's donations erased records. Mom says boys will be boys. I'm so sorry Charlotte got caught in the pattern. Charlotte's face paled, listening on speaker. I asked, would you provide an affidavit? Rachel agreed, voice steadier now. Yes, I'll testify. Maybe this stops him. After we hung up, Charlotte wrapped arms around herself. I wasn't first, but I'll be last, she vowed. Back at Hawthorne, Ellen met us with new information. Paparazzi camped at the front gate, but the estate's private exit remained clear. Gavin escorted us through service roads flanked by azaleas still bright after rain. As the mansion receded, I felt an unexpected lift, like shedding a costume after a suffocating scene. Charlotte broke the silence. I used to picture my wedding here. Now I picture women walking into your center leaving stronger. She reached for my hand. Teach me how to help them. Rain-cooled wind rushed through the open car window, carrying scents of wet earth and promise. "First lesson," I said, squeezing her fingers. "Begin by believing them." She nodded, gaze fixed on unfolding road. That evening we arrived home to find neighbors had filled our porch with bouquets, daisies for courage, hydrangeas for understanding, peonies for compassion. Amid the floral sea sat a single envelope embossed with the Cartwright crest. Inside, a terse note demanding immediate cessation of slander and a cease and desist regarding audio distribution. Charlotte laughed, sharp, cleansing. I fed the letter to the fireplace, flames curling the paper into harmless ash. We brewed chamomile, sipped in near silence, broken only by the crackle of burning entitlement. Charlotte finally leaned back. "Mom, I feel lighter." I traced the sapphire on my hand, now cleaned of blood but forever marked. "Truth lifts," I said. Lightning flickered far off, but no thunder followed. The storm had spent itself. Morning headlines bloomed like bruises across every screen. Runaway groom arrested. Hollywood icon's daughter calls off $200K wedding. I scrolled while stirring oatmeal for Charlotte and the twins, the scent of cinnamon battling the sourness of public spectacle. Rachel Cartwright's affidavit had landed in the DA's inbox overnight. News outlets already teased explosive new allegations. The Cartwright family's press conference was set for 11 a.m. at their Buckhead estate. Marshall planned to watch from the courthouse but urged us to stay home. "Let them step into their own spotlight, Virginia. We'll flip the switch when it matters." At 10:30, Charlotte settled on the sofa between Benji and Ava, clutching my hand so tightly the sapphire ring left an imprint. The children clutched tablets, muted on cartoons. I unmuted the television just as the Cartwright crest filled the frame. Marble columns, manicured hedges, a podium draped in navy. Aiden's father, Lawrence Cartwright, approached. Tailor-perfect suit. Hair silvered by design, not age. His wife, Madeline, stood beside him, pearl necklace straining like it too, wished to flee. "Thank you for coming," Lawrence began, voice oiled for corporate earnings calls. "Our son has suffered a malicious assault on his character. We intend to clear his name and hold those responsible to account." Madeline dabbed a dry eye for emphasis. Then, as if cued by misplaced faith, a reporter shouted, "Is it true another victim has come forward?" Cameras pivoted. From the driveway's edge stepped Rachel, no makeup, cardigan rumpled, eyes resolute. Gasps rippled. Lawrence's jaw tightened. Madeline's pearls seemed to choke. Rachel faced microphones. "Yes, I'm Aiden's sister, but today I stand with Virginia and Charlotte." She unfolded a sheet of paper. In 2018, Aiden was investigated for sexual misconduct at Fulton College. My parents used donations to bury it. He's hurt others, and they enabled him. I won't be complicit anymore. Madeline reached for Rachel's arm. Rachel stepped back. "Stop protecting him, Mother." Reporters erupted, questions overlapping like hail. Lawrence tried to regain control, blasting family matter, unverified claim, but the feed dissolved into chaos. On our couch, Charlotte burst into tears, grief tangled with gratitude. I muted the TV, holding her while Benji fetched tissues, and Ava patted her knee. "He can't hurt anyone now," I whispered. The words felt truer than any headline. My phone buzzed. "Marshall." "Damage control just detonated," he said. "Settlement offer doubled. They'll pay Hawthorne invoice plus $750,000 to the Carter Blackwood Foundation on condition of no civil suit." Charlotte wiped mascara streaks, eyes blazing. "We sue anyway." I shook my head gently. "Let's make them fund futures, not depositions." She inhaled, considering, then nodded. "On one condition, public apology on camera, acknowledging every victim." Marshall chuckled darkly. I'll draft the clause. News vans rolled toward our street by noon. Gavin, stationed at the gate, handed photographers a printed statement. No comment. Truth already spoke. He texted me a thumbs up emoji. Sometimes silence wields the sharpest edges. Inside, we gathered at the dining table, contract drafts, coloring books, syrup sticky plates coexisting. Charlotte signed beside me, pen strokes firm. The funds would seed the elder advocacy wing and launch Cartwright scholarships for survivors pursuing counseling degrees. Irony blossomed like a late camellia. Their hush money would teach others to find their voices. By late afternoon, clouds boiled slate gray, another storm brewing. Charlotte suggested fresh air before rain. We walked the half-built ramp of our new center. Volunteers hammered inside. Ruth's marigolds brightened muddy beds. Benji ran ahead, cardboard rocket in hand, declaring the porch a launch pad. Ava followed, twirling beneath wind chimes now polished to shine. Thunder rumbled as I affixed our refurbished porch plank above the doorway. Runway is ready. Charlotte held the stepladder, rain misting her veil-flattened curls. She looked up, eyes steady. Mom, I spent months dreaming of a perfect aisle. Turns out I needed a runway instead. Lightning cracked, illuminating fresh boards, new purpose. I felt Michael's presence, love as constant as gravity, anchoring the moment. Every takeoff needs turbulence first, I said. We dashed inside as rain sheeted down. Volunteers cheered, the signs reveal. Jasmine handed Charlotte a mug of cocoa. Rachel, now staying with us until trial, arrived carrying a box of donated books for the future resource library. The storm outside roared, but within these walls, voices overlapped with plans, therapy schedules, literacy programs, opening day ribbon colors. Hope, it seemed, was a symphony scored for hammers, heartbeats, and second chances. Later, when the twins slept and volunteers departed, Charlotte and I stood before the fireplace where Cartwright's cease and desist letter had burned to ash. She slipped off her engagement ring, laid it on the mantel. Pawn shop money for more marigolds, she declared. I kissed her forehead, the forehead I kissed after her first audition, after her first heartbreak. New beginnings bloom best in good soil, I said. The storm eased into a soft patter. We opened windows, letting petrichor cleanse rooms still scented with yesterday's pain. Somewhere distant, sirens wailed, maybe reporters chasing another scandal, but our house, our center, remained an island lit by string lights and resilience. I climbed the stairs, pausing outside Charlotte's door. She sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop aglow, drafting a statement for tomorrow's news cycle. I believed love should conquer all. Now I know love must first respect all. I whispered goodnight. She smiled, fingers typing courage into public record. In my own room, I set Michael's sapphire ring on the nightstand. Underneath lay my journal. I added tonight's line. We turned a broken aisle into a runway, and the takeoff has begun. The rain stopped. Crickets chirped tentative lullabies. I switched off the lamp, confident dawn would find us stronger, and drifted to sleep to the gentle rhythm of a house being rebuilt from the inside out. I woke to sunlight spilling through curtains like gold you could walk on. No storm rumble, no police sirens, just birds, insisting the world still held melody. For the first morning in what felt like years, the headlines weren't a noose around my neck. They were scaffolding for something solid. Cartwright dynasty issues, public apology, 800,000 settlement funds abuse center, blared the news ticker when I brewed coffee. But a different message caught my breath. Email from Hawthorne Estate. Subject, footage found. Gavin had combed a backup server and recovered a grainy clip from inside the tent. It showed Aiden leaning toward me, my sudden recoil, the slap of sapphire against flesh, a smoking gun we no longer needed, but proof the universe sometimes delivers receipts with interest. I hit download and stored the file in 3 places. Experience taught me stories often require footnotes once outrage cools. Charlotte padded into the kitchen in borrowed pajamas, hair a copper halo in the morning light. She poured coffee, lifted the mug with a small, victorious tremble. "The apology airs at noon," she said. The Cartwright parents would read a prepared statement acknowledging their role, Rachel at their side as moral witness. "Afterward," Charlotte added, "I'm driving to the college to sign the scholarship paperwork. Want to come?" I did. We left the twins with Jasmine, now temporary nanny-accountant hybrid, and drove south, spring-blooming magnolias along the highway. Charlotte kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other drumming nervous rhythms. "I thought my life's second act would be a gallery expansion," she said. "Turns out it's crisis management and restorative justice." "You'll curate futures instead of paintings," I replied. She smiled, thin but real. At Fulton College, the dean ushered us into a modest auditorium where 20 students waited, some in hoodies, others in church dresses, all united by stories they'd only recently learned were not their fault. Charlotte spoke first, voice wavering, then strengthening as she explained the scholarship's purpose. Therapy stipends, tuition for counseling degrees, an annual seminar on consent. Her words wove around the room, threading pain with possibility. When she finished, applause rose. Not explosive, but steady, like rain nourishing parched earth. She exhaled as if shedding chains. Back home mid-afternoon, we found Rachel in the courtyard planting saplings with Benji and Ava, young magnolias donated by the city in honor of survivors' resilience. She wiped soil from her palms, face flushed. "They'll bloom next spring," she said, "new roots." I hugged her, grateful the universe had turned an accomplice into an ally. Inside, Marshall waited at the dining table. "Signed settlement," he announced, tapping a leather folder. "Funds land tomorrow." He slid over another document, People v. Cartwright witness list. Sentencing in 48 hours. Court wants your victim impact statements. Charlotte's pen hovered above lined paper. I retreated to Michael's old study, the air still faintly cologned with him. I wrote about tense and forced kisses, about daughters blaming mothers, about rings that cut cowards, about silence and its unholy power. When ink dried, I felt lighter, yet storms sometimes revisit. Evening brought a knock, one I recognized from decades of directors telling me to be more vulnerable. It was Madeline Cartwright, pearl necklace absent, shoulders slumped beneath a raincoat, though sky was clear. "May I speak?" she asked. Voice husky from unslept nights, I led her to the porch, wind chimes tinging soft judgment. She clasped trembling fingers. "I participated in covering for my son," she began. "I can't undo harm, but I can testify." She offered a flash drive, financial ledgers proving hush money paid to other families. "Lawrence will disown me," she whispered. I thought of pearls tightening like conscience belts. "You're choosing truth," I said. "Brace yourself for freedom. It weighs more than secrets." She nodded, tears carving mascara-free channels. I guided her inside where Marshall documented chain of custody. Another domino fell. Night settled. Volunteers left. Kids upstairs practiced spelling words, resilience, integrity. Charlotte and I sat on the half-rebuilt porch, palms around mugs of peppermint tea. Streetlights shone on the runway as ready sign, now dusted with pollen. "Tomorrow," I said, "we draft bylaws for the trust board." She tilted her head, "and pick paint colors." I laughed, soft, genuine. "Sage for healing?" And sunrise yellow for new beginnings, she added. Stars pricked velvet sky. Somewhere, Aiden prepared for sentencing, perhaps feeling walls press in, compassion flickered, but justice stood guard. Charlotte leaned against my shoulder. Mom, the worst day of your life became the blueprint for someone else's rescue. I stared at the magnolia seedlings silhouetted in moonlight. Pain is a terrible architect, I said, but it builds strong foundations when we refuse to live in ruins. She squeezed my hand. Inside, the wind chimes stilled, the night finally quiet. Yet ahead loomed a courtroom, flashbulbs, gavel thuds. I finished my tea, tasting mint and promise. Sentencing day rose bright and pitiless, the kind of Atlanta morning that bakes mistakes into hard clay. Courthouse steps swarmed with reporters, their lenses glinting like insect eyes. Marshall guided us through the gauntlet, Charlotte in a tailored cobalt dress, Rachel beside her, and me in Michael's charcoal suit jacket softened by years of closet silence. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over wood polished for drama. Judge Harper took the bench, gavel clack echoing across oak panels. Aiden entered in prison khakis, wrists cuffed, arrogance distilled to a fragile shell. His parents appeared behind the defense table, Lawrence tight-lipped, Madeline pale but resolute, the flash drive she'd given us now. State's Exhibit 17, row after row of ledger screenshots glowed on courtroom monitors. Hush payments, tuition bribes, donations labeled capital improvements that actually silence girls too young to spell litigation. The prosecutor outlined counts of sexual battery, perjury, and obstruction. Then it was our turn. Charlotte rose first, voice calm but resonant, describing stolen trust and the echoing harm to every woman who would doubt herself because someone discounted. No, Rachel followed, confessing complicity, vowing restitution by testifying. Finally, I approached the lectern, sapphire ring catching courtroom light. I spoke of tents that became cages, of choosing a slap over silence, of watching my daughter's heart break so it could mend around stronger truths. Judge Harper listened, chin resting on interlaced fingers. Defense attempted contrition. Aiden's therapist cited childhood pressure, Lawrence offered charitable deeds, but Madeline's late-night ledgers had detonated credibility. When verdict time came, the judge delivered 5 years state, 2 suspended for treatment, lifetime registration, and a mandate that any future income above living wage flow to the Carter Blackwood Foundation. Harper's gavel landed like thunder contained. Outside, microphone sprouted. Lawrence read the drafted apology, voice shaky, acknowledging victims, accepting family culpability, pledging $1 million in endowment funds. Cameras flashed, social feeds erupted. Behind him, Madeline stood taller than I'd ever seen her. 2 days later, the Carter Blackwood Center opened its doors. Volunteers strung sage and sunrise banners over the new ramp. Gavin managed parking. Jasmine checked in the first guests. A retired teacher scammed by a nephew, a war widow evicted by distant heirs, a shy college athlete still learning the word consent. They stepped into bright rooms where marigolds lined windowsills and laptops waited with resource portals. Charlotte welcomed each one, her voice a steady bridge from pain to possibility. Mid-afternoon, while Ava showed a guest the reading nook, a courier arrived with a heavy envelope addressed to me. Inside lay a single signed photograph. My younger self on a magazine cover, lips red, eyes defiant, inscribed, "Remember who you were before applause." No sender listed, but I recognized the handwriting. My former agent, the one who tolerated producers' casting couch chemistry. A sticky note added, "Files still intact. Call if you want them gone." Old power trying to reincarnate. I took the photo to the porch where new magnolias waved small, glossy leaves. Charlotte joined me, reading the note. Blackmail, she guessed. I shook my head, more like a ghost refusing to stay buried. I slipped the photo into the donation shred bin just inside the door. Let the past compost, I said. We would feed future blooms with it. Evening settled, honey gold over freshly painted walls. Volunteers departed, lights dimmed. In the kitchen, Benji practiced spelling integrity on a chalkboard backsplash while Rachel simmered tomato soup. Madeline, having cut ties with Lawrence, arrived carrying suitcases. She would direct our new financial ethics program. The house, once echoing silence, now thrummed with layered conversation. I slipped out to the porch. Wind chimes sang. The runway is ready. Plank glowed beneath string lights. I imagined Michael leaning against a post, approving. My phone buzzed. Marshall texting a single line. The dynasty fell. The center rises. I smiled, slipped the phone away, inhaled night air, rich with jasmine and possibility. Behind me, laughter erupted. Ava convinced Madeline to try a cartwheel. I turned to watch a former enabler, cheeks flushed, flop onto soft grass while children cheered. That image, proof that people can choose different endings, felt like the closing scene my life story had searched for. Tomorrow would bring zoning inspections, therapy sessions, maybe an old scandal resurfaced. But tonight, a porch built from shattered vows held us steady. I whispered into the dark, "We're cleared for takeoff." The chimes answered, and somewhere in the quiet between their notes, I heard an audience applaud, not for an actress, but for a woman who finally directed her own script. The first crisis arrived before sunrise in the form of a panicked voicemail from Jasmine. A guest, Mrs. Ortega, the retired teacher we'd welcomed only yesterday, was missing, her bed untouched, her phone left charging by the lamp. Instinct tightened around my ribs. I dressed in sweats and hurried down the hallway toward the center's common room where the overnight volunteer stood wringing his hands beneath the glow of emergency exit signs. "Cameras?" I asked. Gavin, summoned by group text, tapped security footage onto the projector. At 3:12 a.m., Mrs. Ortega slipped out the side door, shoulders hunched, clutching a tattered envelope. No one followed. The timestamp overlapped with the thunderstorm that rattled magnolia leaves against windows like urgent fingers. Enough noise to mask her departure. Charlotte and Rachel joined us, still in slippers. "She told me her nephew kept calling," Rachel whispered. "He wants the last of her pension." Predatory relatives rarely respected locks. Fear could lure survivors back into danger. We moved fast. Gavin pinged patrol officers with a description. Jasmine located the nephew's address through Mrs. Ortega's intake forms. Marshall, who apparently never sleeps, called to share that the Cartwright settlement had cleared overnight and offered his driver for a quick, discreet retrieval. Within 20 minutes, Charlotte and I were in the backseat of a black sedan slicing through pre-dawn streets that smelled of wet asphalt and wisteria. As we drove, an alert flashed on Charlotte's phone. Gallery investor board meeting moved to 8 a.m., the same board that included Lawrence Cartwright's holding company. She muttered, "Of course they'd regroup the instant the dynasty falls." I squeezed her hand. First rescue, then reckon. We reached a crumbling bungalow on the city's south edge. Police cruisers already idled out front. Red, blue strobes washing desperation in patriotic hues. Officers escorted Mrs. Ortega down the porch steps. Her nephew, handcuffed, argued that she owed family first. She spotted us, tears carving tracks through rain-damp hair. "I thought I had to give him everything," she whispered. Charlotte wrapped her shawl around the woman's shoulders. "Not anymore. Let's go home." Back at the center, Jasmine brewed cinnamon coffee while Rachel phoned a pro bono attorney to secure a protective order before lunch. Crisis resolved. Morning avoided. Our first major test passed before most of Atlanta finished breakfast, but another battlefield waited uptown. Charlotte changed into a steel gray sheath dress, pinned her curls, and marched into her gallery boardroom with me and Marshall flanking like counsel and conscience. 12 directors occupied a mahogany table, eyes darting between agenda packets and morning headlines scrolling across their tablets. At the head sat Cynthia Drake, chairwoman, jade earrings glinting cold approval. "We appreciate today's urgency," Cynthia intoned, "given recent developments." Lawrence Cartwright's seat stood empty, a ghost of money now toxic. Another director cleared his throat. "Our endowment lost 20% overnight when Cartwright Holdings tanked. We must stabilize reputation." Charlotte placed a folder before them. Press clippings, apology transcript, scholarship launch photos. "Reputation isn't lipstick," she said. "It's bone. We rebuild by standing with survivors, not scrubbing association." She announced immediate divestment from all Cartwright funds and a new partnership, a traveling exhibition curated by abuse survivors depicting reclamation through art, with proceeds to the Carter Blackwood Center. Murmurs. One director asked about missing revenue. That's when Marshall slid a single-page pledge across the table, 7 figures, signature rendered in bold strokes. A friend of the Runway Initiative. The anonymous donor's condition: the gallery must devote 1/3 of its annual schedule to social impact art and host free workshops for vulnerable youth. Cynthia's jade earrings tilted as she read the sum, eyebrows climbing. "Who?" she breathed. Marshall offered only a polite smile. The vote to accept was unanimous. Cartwright Holdings was expelled, the empty chair symbolically left vacant. Back in the hallway, Charlotte exhaled. "Anonymous friend?" Marshall shrugged. "Philanthropy likes good mysteries. We'd unravel it later. Momentum mattered now." By afternoon, the center buzzed louder than ever. Contractors finished sanding the last wing. Volunteers stacked donated laptops in a glass-walled tech lab. In the atrium, I placed a bronze plaque. "This runway is dedicated to every voice that rose after being told to hush." Beneath, space remained for future names. Madeline emerged from an office clutching spreadsheets. First month's budget balanced, with room for outreach microgrants. She'd turned ledger skills once used for cover-ups into tools of restitution. Growth came in strange packages. Near dusk, a sleek electric SUV rolled up. Gavin radioed, "VIP arrival." We opened the door to Ellen Hawthorne, the estate manager, carrying a velvet box. "Had this made from the altar arch you never used," she said, revealing pens carved from white oak. "For signing future successes." Behind her stood a tall figure in a baseball cap and sunglasses. He removed them. Hugh Bartlett, retired movie director who'd cast me in my first breakout role. "I'm your anonymous donor." His smile held decades of unspoken respect. When tabloids mocked you back then, you never compromised. Figured you'd put cash where courage lives. My throat tightened. We hugged. Camera flashes from waiting media freezing the moment, but this time the story belonged to us. Night blanketed the center. The twins staged a puppet show in the community room, using paper bag characters labeled Truth, Hope, and Very Bad Nephew. Laughter ricocheted off freshly painted sage walls. Volunteers departed, leaving behind the hum of possibility. Charlotte and I stepped onto the porch. The magnolia saplings swayed under starlight, leaves reflecting string light halos. "Next week we open satellite clinics in Savannah and Birmingham," she said. "The network is taking off." I traced the runway is ready plank with my fingertips. Dad would be proud, she finished. Above us, the wind chimes rang 3 clear notes as if in agreement. I turned, taking in the house once emptied by grief, now bursting at seams with redemption. We started with a slap, I whispered, and built a liftoff. Charlotte linked her arm through mine. Now we teach others to fly. Somewhere a plane droned overhead toward distant gates. Not every passenger would arrive to open arms. Some would disembark into betrayal. But a runway glowed here, lit by sapphire resilience, marigold hope, and every brave yes that once began as a refused no. And tonight, beneath forgiving stars, that felt like more than enough.